Welcome back to Soda City Live. Today, we are going to talk about metals. One in particular being silver is used in tableware and jewelry, but how much do you know about it? My guest today knows just about everything there is to know about silver, so much that her nickname is the Charleston Silver Lady. Let's welcome Dawn. Corley, so glad to have you on the show.
Thank you. I'm so happy to be here.
I am excited. I feel like I have a new best friend. So before we came back from break, we were talking a little bit about some of the items that you brought in. But before we go into the details about some of the items that you brought in, I just want to know how this fascination with silver came about.
Well, I was raised in Charleston. I was raised by my grandmother and a great aunt, so I was raised with all the advantages of older eyes showing me the world. And my first ancestor in America was one of the first silversmiths in America.
Wow.
So we had all this cutlery all over the house, and just like everyone in the South, we had no money but loads of beautiful things. And so I was made into a preservationist from the very beginning of my life, because you know, if I broke a fork, we couldn't have another fork. If I broke a plate, we wouldn't have another plate. And I started loving the silver because it had little letters on it, which I came to know was engraving and monogramming. And I could trace back my ancestors by reading the handles of the forks and the spoons. So to me, it was just an interesting thing to do. I come from a family of artists. I'm an artist. So for me, I connect to the artistry on the piece and that someone actually made it. And I love the idea that those were pieces that had been passed down that were still perfectly good 200 years later.
I love that. And I want for our viewers to know why silver is so valuable.
Well, it's got a couple of things that make it valuable. First of all, you know, anything that's a precious metal is going to have a metal value. And so when it comes to pieces like what we're going to talk about today, what makes those valuable is their history or provenance and their literal history, meaning that is one of those items is a result of a patron of the arts and an artist actually crafting this for you. What makes these particular ones especially valuable, though, is that they're from South Carolina. They're made of melted coins. It's called coin silver, which is a uniquely American alloy. And of course, there's so many wars and things and battles went on in South Carolina, and so much of our history was destroyed that when you find pieces like that, they're very precious. And they're generally one of a kind because they didn't have molds then to make bunch or a whole bunch of things to match.
And tell us a little bit about what you have in your hand there, speaking of wars.
I will. Both of these are called pap feeders. And what pap was kind of like cream of wheat watered down that you would feed a baby or an invalid. And you could somehow maybe sneak something in it like opium to quell pain, but nothing to stop disease because they hadn't really invented that yet. No pills were around. So these will nest right in your hand like this so that you can easily hold them. And they're completely handmade. No machine ever touched either of these. So you would place the invalid or baby's head in your hand this way, part their lips, and pour that into their mouth. So for someone who was dying on the battlefield and you wanted them to be in less pain, or if your infant was sick or hungry, this was a wonderful way to give them their medicine because silver was found in Roman times to be antimicrobial. So the idea of this was the cleanliness aspect too, which is really why it stayed around so long and why it's still here and it still is antimicrobial. You can buy bandages made by Curad that make regular band-aids that have silver in the little pad that will escalate healing. You can buy sheets with silver woven into them,
wow,
tennis shoes, clothing. Just take a look and you'll find it. It's incredible.
Now, with the pieces that you have here, how are you able to age them? How are you able to tell how old they are?
Well, you can look at the physical, which is really confusing unless you really know how to do that. So for me, I look at them and I'm looking for all the irregularities. I appreciate that there's not two that match or there's not a set. Sets to me mean a mold.
Right.
Okay. And then all of these, I'm not sure if we can pick this up or not, but all of these have small little marks on the back. And each of those marks is an indication of something very specific according to that special piece. So one means where it was made, one means the date, one means the alloy it was made from, so it's assuring you that it's solid silver. And then the other one is a stamp of the city it was made in. So everything on the back there is registering it. And remember, at that time, melting money was kind of like burning money in the fireplace would be today. So a silversmith had a big task of ensuring the person who gave him the coins that, yes, I'm making it of pure metal of your coins. So this was legal tender on the back. This meant that could be melted back into coins one day if it needed to be.
Oh, wow. One of the things that, and we're going to show you if we can see the details right here. One thing that I really love with looking close at a lot of the pieces that you've brought today is just the minor imperfections. It just has so much history. It's like holding, it's different from seeing things like this in a history book than holding it in your hand.
So
like I am
too.
literally holding history. At one point, someone used this.
They did.
It tells you so, it just tells, it's like every piece tells a story.
It does.
And speaking of story, let's talk a little bit about some of the pieces that you have here.
Okay, the far one in the very front, it looks like a little trowel, like a triangular shaped blade, that one. That's from the Governor Gist family of South Carolina. That's a real special piece. And if you look on the blade, there's an engraving of their home on the blade. So this is another thing.
Like YouTube.
There you go. This is another thing that's real important. Making silver and decorating silver are two completely different sides of the brain. So there were very fashionable decorators who came in and could do the micro drawings on there. So two people involved in making that.
That's absolutely amazing. Now we're going to have to wrap up, and I'm going to have you back because this is so interesting.
I'll come back.
You told me about this item here. They look like shears or scissors, but what is this actually?
That is, when you watch her hand, you'll see how it opens just like she said, like a scissor. That is for snuffing out the wick of a candle. And remember, that was made about 1780, so there was no fire truck to come if your ember got on your curtains or your tablecloth, and that assured you that you would snuff it completely out, and the point on the end pulls the wick out of the wax.
I love it. We're going to have to wrap up here, but I do want our viewers to know how they can find you, because you do have an antique shop, but you're not selling items at this time.
Right.
You're just doing appraisals.
Right. I do appraisals. I do private appraisals of items like this. I do a lot of lectures, a lot of specialty lectures. If anyone wants to come to anything, just email me. It's charlestonsilverlady@gmail.com, charlestonsilverlady@gmail.com, and I'll get it.
And your website?
And the website is charlestonsilverlady.com.
Perfect. And she also has a blog. I had one more question, if we could sneak it in there. I just want to know, how are you able to detect if something is real silver? Because I know sometimes things are painted, and then sometimes things have shavings.
They are. And you might remember when I asked you earlier to pick up the large ladle that's here that's got a big bow in the handle. When we pick that up, this one closer to us, and you can flex that, it's soft. That tells you that there's no false metal underneath. Remember that coin silver and sterling are very soft. Plated items are very rigid and heavy and don't have any bend in the metal whatsoever.
Ooh, I love it. Well, Dawn, thank you so much for joining us today. I feel like I learned so much, and I would love if you come back.
I'll come back.
Thank you.
I'll come back.
We'll have much more Soda City Live coming up after the break, and we'll have this interview on our website, sodacitylive.com. Don't go anywhere. Stick with us.